Bubble gum stuck to my shoe. Heavy petting in the neon hue. Cracked vase on the kitchen floor. I get what I want, then I want more. Soaking in the bathtub fizz. The way you look at me is a quiz. Hair teased high like a wild storm. In your arms I feel so warm. Lick my cupcake, sweet sensation. It's a sugar-coated invitation. Don't you know it's such a sin when you don't dig in? Ripped tights and a leather jacket. Got a secret, can you hack it? Lights blur as we drive fast. Make this moment last and last. Pink lipstick on your collar screen. We make a pretty reckless team. 80s music in the air. Nobody else can compare. Lick my cupcake, sweet sensation. It's a sugar-coated invitation. Don't you know it's such a sin when you don't dig in? When you don't dig in.
It is 11 a.m., second Saturday of your average week, which means it's time for these whores to go to church. Yeah, that's the way it goes. Good morning, friends. How are we? Doing well, I see. I am. It is warm in here. Got my little foot warmer here. You don't need that going all the time. I moved my my little radiator into the studio so that my paintings would dry faster. That's the whole reason. Hello. Let us sermonize, shall we? All right. Today, we have a bit of a fun one. I'm not entirely sure I know where I'm going with it, apart from the basics. So, down to the basics. If there's anything that we need to bring back from the 1800s, it is not their views of gender, sex, and family. It is, far and away, the constitutional. Oh, yeah. You guys know the constitutional, don't you? Oh, yes. Windy walks. Why? Well, ventilation, primarily. You see, in the 1800s, ventilation is mainly windows, right? And so as the months get colder and you have people wrapped up tight, very tight, very tight, you're sealed up in there, right? And then they're sitting around doing what? Playing card games and eating bread, pudding, beef, chicken, ham, venison, all day. You got to get these people out for a constitutional. That's why they were called the constitutional. Get those people out of doors. It's cold out there. I don't care. Get out there. We don't have proper ventilation for you to just eat and play cards and gossip and fan yourself in the house all day. Get out. But you think about it. If we were to bring it back today, where's this report? I'm sorry, I couldn't get that report on your desk by 3 o'clock. I don't think you're aware. But from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. is my afternoon constitutional. You don't want me sitting around here during my constitutional. I must constitute my constitutional. I'll defend this to the death. It's been since high school when I took an advanced placement course. Thank you. In English. Actually, I took 3 of them. Thank you. And the third one was 19th century women's literature. And I thought, ugh, like people do who don't read 19th century literature. There's another story. It is more lewd. We will save it for Lingo longer. I came to thinking about this because of a recent encounter that has to do with more adult themes. We'll keep it more family focused. Don't make a joke. Don't make a joke. We're not doing that. That's not what this is about. But the thing that was remarkable to me was that men don't really seem to appreciate the role that women's literature in the 19th century played in shaping the society that we live in now, and how it benefits men as well as women, etc. Well, it's early in the sermon. We'll get to that. Now, something to not bring back, though, from the 1800s is brainwashing women into internalizing a need for men in order to survive and to thrive. Authors of Regency novels worked too hard to instill higher values in the women of their day for us to just forget that in the day where we largely benefit from their ideas, the ideas put forth by their heroines. Every time with that. That's what men who don't read Regency novels don't get about 19th century women's literature. I mean, I do. I get it. But I am amazing. Now, consider Elizabeth Bennet's refusal of Mr. Collins, a match that would have secured her family's home, is a striking act of personal autonomy, essentially declaring that she will not marry without love, which was a pretty selfish thing by the standards of the day. Even if society frowns at a woman rejecting a financially advantageous offer. Now, remember, a financially advantageous offer for her family. This is not just about taking her off her family's hands and putting her onto the dole, like it's like she's going on welfare. Okay, she is not just being transferred into a man's care and into his money. She is transferring his wealth into her family. Okay, and so then there's Mr. Darcy. All right, whom she's not particularly into. I mean, let's just be blunt here. Can we girls talk out of school? She doesn't like Mr. Darcy. She doesn't like him. She doesn't want to like him, right? That's what we're talking about here. But then she has to defy Lady Catherine de Bourgh's attempt to bully her into refusing him, saying that she will not be intimidated to relinquish the object of her affection. Get it, girl. Toxic men are toxic, right? But that doesn't mean we aren't also fun. You know what I'm saying? They made a whole Netflix show about it. Okay. Now, don't yuck her yum. That's the point, right? Another thing that we might bring back are foot warming boxes. You know, like a sort of waist down spa day wherever you are. I mean, just think about this for a second. If they were going to make everybody actually, if they don't say any names, if certain actors of wealth and means in our modern society do require us to send people back into the office to work instead of working from home, well, at the very least, we've attained a certain level of comfort. We have attained a certain level of intimacy of our work environment. Why not bring back the little boxes with the holes poked in them? You put some hot coals in there. Probably not coals. We'll put a little electric warmer in there, and maybe like a little dish with some water in it, some essential oils. And what do you have? You got a waist down spa day. You just throw your skirt over it. And ladies, all it takes is for you to insist this has to be a thing, or we're not coming back. It's a strike, right? And then we gentlemen will be able to go into human resources and complain and say, she can't just take is it half a spa day? Or is it a full spa day of only half of you? It's a philosophical thing, really. The foot warmer spa day. But what I'm saying is, then we can also go and say it's not fair. That's not fair. She still gets to zoom into the meeting because she's having a foot warming box day, and then we will get to wear skirts to work. And this works out to we got to team up, is what I'm saying. We got to be on each other's side. Someone had to say it. It had to be said. In Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, Jane goes to war with the whole world to maintain her personal independence without forfeiting the chance for love and belonging. Right? Jane constantly asserts her self-respect in the face of those who have power over her. She says, I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will. Nice. I mean, we're talking women's liberation here. We're talking about true social change. And this encapsulates her refusal to be caged by anyone's expectations. Ultimately, Jane is willing to choose solitude and uncertainty over violating her conscience or sense of self. And this is definitely seen, spoiler alert. We're going to do a few spoilers here. If you haven't read Jane Eyre, by now you're not gonna do it. I'll keep the spoilers light though. When she leaves Thornfield, rather than live as Rochester's kept woman, and again when she declined St. John's command that she become a missionary's wife, by the novel's end, Jane has achieved a rare thing for a Victorian heroine. If it's not going to, if the pronunciation is not going to be nailed down by others, I'm going to intentionally screw it up, just to make it, just to highlight the need. Financial, moral, and emotional independence, and only then does she reunite with Rochester. But she does. Talk about women choosing toxic men. Do we need to get into this? I have a whole bit about Rochester and Jane. Let's not do the bit right now, but there's a whole bit. But the choice has to be hers to make. Now, we see this again with Mary Shelley approaching the theme of independence from a completely different angle in Frankenstein. I hadn't thought I was going to like this course, right? Because I, being a modern Mormon teenage boy, had read Pride and Prejudice for fun and discovered that my idea of fun is not Jane Austen. Don't come at me. Don't look. Okay, it's fine. I read it. It's fine. And it was interesting. And it was very close to, like Shakespearean works in a way, right? And so I was like, I loved Shakespeare, so I said, well, this is like in the same vein. I should at least know what it's about. I'd read Pride and Prejudice. I'd gotten a dose of Jane Austen, thought I understood what this whole 19th century. I was a very toxic lad. I was a very toxic youth. All right. And then I get into this course. And we have a certain number of books to read in the list. But the first one that was required reading, if I recall correctly, was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know Frankenstein was written by a woman. And woof, what a woman. I mean, what a mind this person had. So you think about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, right? You have these men who have unchecked independence and ambition that leads to tragedy. This is the social commentary. And frankly, Mary Shelley, she kind of retired it with this. I mean, like, she laid down the glove and then just walked away, and it was epic. And consider that Victor Frankenstein single-mindedly pursues scientific glory, very masculine values of the day, but essentially by severing himself from normal social and family life to do so. In creating the creature alone, usurping what is perceived by Shelley as the natural family-oriented process of creation. Old school country matters. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. This is strangely a modern quandary, right? Think about this. Can a person who wants to be a parent choose to do it alone? Sure. But in Mary Shelley's version, it's in the greatest way possible, completely and utterly failed. Now, that's not to say that a person choosing to have children by themselves without a partner is the quandary. No. The point here, I would put to you, is that Victor Frankenstein wants to embody all the highest ambitions of masculinity by becoming a father without the need of a mother to the family, but embody society's values of the ambitions of manliness while attaining none of the virtues established over millennia of human society in the role of motherhood. He doesn't realize what he has never taken the time to learn about the role of being a caring, a nurturing, a protective, an instructional person who has a responsibility towards their child, towards the creature. He thinks it's just in making him. Well, if being a good parent just meant making something that was not there, a being that was not alive, now become alive, well, then it would be easy, and none of us would have any of this Mormon scarring we've got going on. It's not all of us. It's just, this is specific to some people in the room. There are other versions of it besides just Mormonism. At the end of the day, it's about ownership, isn't it? You remember when President Obama, for good or for ill, I make no political endorsements, made a statement about how people need to remember that their children don't belong to them, that they are not their property. And there was a field day at Fox News. All the things the man says in a day while being Barack Obama. And this is the thing that they had a field day with, days on end over at Fox News. Can you believe he said, your children are not yours? Okay. Is that what he said? No. Once again, it's not what he said. What he said is your children are not your property. Children are human beings. They are not property. If they were property, you could dispose of them when you felt it convenient. Regency novels. Just saying. Regency novels. Think about this, okay? If children were your property, you could just decide to do anything that you wanted to them and nobody could tell you what was morally right or wrong. And this is where we get to the crux of it, right? If children are beings who have rights, certainly women who are adults have rights. And those rights include, first and foremost, a need to be independent, like Jane Eyre, to have ownership of self. You think about how men and women are different. Like there is Mary Shelley brought it really in the perspective of how even men are ensnared by a social norm that defines gender roles so rigidly. And so in effect, we have created a system where women are treated like chattel. Even in marriage, we call it giving them away. She has to be given away, right? Why? Because we're not going to pay to feed her all her life, right? And she has this terrible book habit. Please take this one, right? Where does that value come from? At the end of the day, I'm just going to give you a little peek ahead of this. At the end of the day, it comes from economics, and it comes from the practicalities of that time and place. But it doesn't escape notice that also comes from the Bible. Is that because the Bible is a construct of this society of Western values and Western society, or is Western society? It's a chicken and egg thing we don't have to get into. Yes and yes, no and no. It's both, right? But at the end of the day, in order to survive, our society had developed, I'm referring to that side of my society, my personal ancestry, that is colonizer. There's this society that has developed to thrive by understanding that everybody has to make a self-sacrifice. Everybody has to choose that they are not going to just pursue whatever they want. They're going to pursue family and keep generations going. And all of our economics are going to be based on that. All of our marital and family roles are going to be based on that. And everybody plays a part in it. You know, I was thinking about this while I was preparing these remarks. Some of my sermons have become particularly ranty. Maybe we learn to love it, and maybe we don't. Or maybe I change. But you think about matchmaking in Regency novels. The whole family, the whole community is involved in matchmaking in these novels, right? There are women, in fact, some of the more toxic shit that comes out of these Regency novel characters is about how particularly older married women and or widows will work all day at trying to make an appropriate match. And it's a whole business. I mean, it's certainly whether or not they're getting paid for it. It's their whole livelihood. It's their role in the society. And while today, I think you could actually find a lot of people who would think that matchmaking, having other people around you doing the matchmaking for you wouldn't be so bad. I mean, we see it all the time. People saying, you know, I've done Tinder, I've done the hookup lifestyle, I've done Hinge or whatever. I've done all this dating, and it doesn't seem to make any difference. I definitely feel alone. And the more that they date, the more alone that they feel. Because the modern convenience of being able to find somebody you didn't know and potentially hook up, sooner, leaves people feeling empty and alone. This is things I've read. The people I've met on Tinder know that I feel differently. That sounds like a joke. But it's that I defy you. I defy you to find one. Find one. They'll all tell you, oh, boy settles down too easy, if anything. All right. Anyways, But you think about this, like how many shareholders are profiting and benefiting from from these hookup apps and or matchmaking. Let's call it matchmaking. Because the business is less about making a connection to have a family or to have a home or to eventually find someone to settle down with. And whether or not that's something people should be looking to do with their lives, it is something people are looking to do with their lives. And being an ethical non-monogamist in that scene, you see it a lot, and you'll learn the hard way about this a lot. People will say, "Oh, I'm cool with that. Oh, you're married already, but you're looking for an additional person just to go on a date with." It's like I'm not saying we're gonna have to be partners. I'm just saying, let me take a girl for some coffee. You like coffee, don't you? Right, or whatever. And they say it's easy to say, "Oh no, that's cool. I'm very hip and modern and into new ideas about what the role of family and gender and sex are in this modern age. I'm a very modern person." It's another thing to then go home at night and pay the bills by yourself, go to bed by yourself, pull out your phone to doom scroll for a while and pretend you're not feeling anxious until you can eventually fall asleep and get up tomorrow, do it all over again, and have your inbox filled with, "Hey, you up? Hey, you up?" Not for me, mind you, not for me. But I hear about this. This wild thing happens when you are a man who reads Regency novels, or has, and is an ethical non-monogamous in the dating scene. You do this wild thing with women. I know we're gonna keep it family friendly. Don't worry. You don't have to turn it off. You don't have to turn it off. You do this crazy thing when you date women. As a man, as a toxic man who's learning to untoxify, is that you talk to them like a lot. And there are a lot of women I discovered in the time when I was doing actively dating. I haven't been pursuing new partners. That's not the words. I haven't been actively dating for a while. And, but when I was, I frequently would have these conversations with incredible women I wouldn't have otherwise met. And where they talk about the culture, the lifestyle of living as a single woman in Utah, because this whole experience has been while I was in Utah, in this modern age, and their experience is shockingly similar to those of men that I find. They feel lonely, constantly surrounded by people, and not always comfortably. Let's face it, girl swipes right on this face, neurodivergent as fuck. That's the way that's gonna work out. And I love it. I'm here for it. I think they're great. And the conversations that I have with these women really educated me a lot on how toxic I still am and how much I still have to learn about the relationships between myself and women, and between all of us as human beings, as individuals. And some of the theme that kept coming back up for me in my experience is, yes, there's some things that are toxic in our society about the way human beings see their own gender, see their own sexuality and their own gender expression, their own gender identity, and see their own roles. Because a lot of these women that I would date, they were single moms, and it's like, who am I as a mother? Does that have anything to do with dating? Sure, it does. Absolutely, it does. And so they're saying, who am I as a person? Who am I as a woman? Who am I as a mother? Who am I as an object of somebody else's desire? Who am I as a person who objectifies other people for my desires? What are my desires even? What am I allowed to desire? And how many times I wound up with this late night text from somebody I've been on 2 dates with, or somebody I've been dating for like 3 months or 6 months. I wish that I had somebody to help me carry the load. I'll never forget the first time I got that, and then saw it again and again. I feel like I'm having fun. Like this has been good. This has been a good relationship, you know. But eventually, I'm going to have to settle down with somebody, and that was a pretty polite way of saying, and it was, of saying, this has been good, Joe, but this is going to close. This is going to come to a close pretty soon here. If I'm going to go out and find somebody who's going to help me to share these bills, and you have everything you have everything that I want in a relationship already with somebody else. I feel it. It's like I get it. I understand. And that's when you begin to realize the really difficult and painful thing that we are experiencing in this modern day, when people are redefining what relationships look like, is that for practical purposes, some of these things have evolved in our society. The standard that says belonging to somebody else is not liberating in any way, but it is safe. And boy, don't we all want to feel safe. And to be able to say, I want to be able to walk away from a job I hate and say, it's all right, we'll make it together, we'll make it. Or to say, let's have a child, bring a person into this existence. And will I get tired? Of course I will get tired. Will I not know what to do? Yeah, lots of the time. Will I not know, how to take care of them when they're sick? Will I know how to teach them how to talk and how to potty train? I don't know what I don't know about what's going to take to bring up this child in the world. That's okay. I got somebody else to share the load. And you see again and again in this space why it is people say in the polyamorous space, people say, you have to learn this the hard way. Go learn it the hard way. Date other people in the polyamorous space already. Don't try converting monogamous over into ethical non-monogamists. You'll hurt people. And you think, I was a monogamist just recently, and it's much better. This is gonna be easy. It's gonna be fun. They can make their own choice. That's true. That is true. But at the same time, you see this pain in people's lives, and you're like, well, I didn't come into this person's life to make their life harder. I didn't get into this life to make your life harder and make it worse, and then there is the breakups. Constantly start dating people who are not non-monogamous today, even if those people are out there hooking up with everybody in the world. Not everybody in the world. There are a lot of people. Yeah, not everybody in the world, but they're out there doing the hookup culture, going through that carousel. And, you'll find that those people are very lonely. Not because the lifestyle makes them lonely, but because they don't feel like they are allowed to own themselves. And the practicalities of living in this economic structure confine people and make it so that they either are going to settle down with somebody they don't want to be with, or in a long-term relationship that they don't want, or they have to decide that they're going to figure out how to invent an economy. And I can't say that strongly enough, to create an economy where they can be alone, either by getting a better job, by getting, different living circumstances, figuring out how they're going to inherit property, because God forbid if you should have to buy a house in this economy, or whatever that may be. Choose van life, whatever it is. Make a complete lifestyle change so that they can be single, versus the frankly rare occasion where somebody meets somebody they truly love and think, this person I cannot live without, and if it is till death do us part with this person, it's going, I'll write it out and see how far we can go, and make it 20 years, make it 30 years, make it 40 or 50 years. It's a rare thing in our society. Is that because the values of our society have slipped? Because we have fallen away from God? Surely. Yes, absolutely. If God is toxic masculinity, and God certainly is toxic masculinity, there will never be a day in our future where women are expected to worship a masculine God and are not treated like property. That's my opinion, and people are welcome to disagree with it. But I feel like reading the women's literature in the 19th century really taught me from an early age in my life to understand these women were crying out. They weren't just trying to create a fantasy about a world where they were equal. They were trying to create and instill in other women, more than anything else, a value that said that you are enough as you actually are. And if somebody wants to love you and you want to love them, screw the rest of it. Screw what people think in society. Screw the paying the bills. Be homeless if you have to. But don't throw away your independence. Don't throw away the ownership of yourself in the interest of being safe and comfortable. Because safe and comfortable is the path to ruin. And I think that that's a value we still could benefit from. I think these women were ahead of their time, not just in women's rights, but in the rights of all people. Now we live in a day and age where we can say these words out loud for the first time, I feel, in a broader context of our society. That gender is a social construct. That sex is not as simple as a binary dynamic, especially when you have so many people out there in our world who don't have even a basic comprehension of how the biology of sex works. There, I mean sex as a quality or an attribute of physical bodies, not the act. We don't even have time to get into what people don't understand about the act. Anyway, the act, as if it is one act. If you're lucky, it's not one act. This is the family appropriate show. We do that and shit and linger longer. But in a world where we can actually embrace that, gender has never been something that was purposeful in the construction of beings, of people. Because people aren't designed. People are the consequence of evolution, just the same as all other beings that exist that we know of. And it's a beautiful thing. You look into the history of how creatures have evolved on this planet and likely on others, even some maybe nearer than we thought. And look at this and think, if you see beauty only in a purpose of a designer, you're going to miss what makes it beautiful. There didn't have to be life in the universe, but arbitrarily, it would seem there is. It's not that it had to be, it's that there was bound to be, and we are a part of it. And we look to it. Here we are, these conscious beings. We could think about anything we want to think about, really, that we have the capacity to think about anyway. That's a whole other question. And what do we think about? Well, we think about, among other things, mainly we think about sex, also about money. But when you have, let's say, in the rare occasion where you have enough money and you've had enough sex for now, you have enough money for now, you have enough sex for now. What do we think about? We think about things like, are the animals suffering? Like, humpback whales have brains so much larger than ours. None of that is being used to stay up late at night wondering if you're going to get whatever the humpback whale equivalent of is of, hey, you up? How you doing? How you feeling? You want to see a no? All right, that's cool. All right. Hey, you up? No, it's still me. I mean, what does that sound like in humpback whale? Like, woo. It's like, what does it sound back when you signal back? It's like, this is the same one. I'm the same. I'm the same, Emily. We already did this. We did this like 10 minutes ago. What? Yes, I'm up because you're keeping me up. Lose my number, prick. Anyways, this is the family show, family appropriate show. When we're living, we have time to think about consciousness. We tend to think about things like, what does it mean to suffer? What am I doing with my life? Yes, but what am I supposed to do with my life? What stage of life am I in? Am I doing it well? Am I getting what I want out of this life? And then there are these people I brought into this world, these conscious beings who exist in my world. And they look to me as a role model. Am I being their role model? Am I being the role model to them that my parents were? Why do I still want to be the kind of role model that my parents were? Why did I start doing this without knowing for sure what the values I wanted to instill in another generation were? These are the things that we can think about because we have the neurophysiology to do it, and we have the comfort, the safety, and time to do it. Maybe that's why we spend so much of our lives pursuing becoming richer, becoming, more influential, getting a better position, getting more power, getting more, is because if we ever got to a point where we said, look, I could probably survive with less and less and less and live like this, but it would mean spending time at home by myself, thinking about things. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we better not. Maybe we better take on another project. Maybe I better do another thing. Maybe I better take on a second job, get another career. Maybe I need to, maybe I need to have a baby. Maybe I need to find somebody who needs me. Yeah. Because God forbid, I sit here and think about what does it mean to be alive? And why did I make that happen for others? And now that we're making it happen, if we're all making it happen for each other, if all of this social contract is about about everybody, let's all survive, let's all thrive as much as we can. Are we going to address that nobody really knows what that looks like? Do you know what that looks like? What does it look like when we're not just surviving, we're thriving? That's what you think it looks like? Fuck me. All right. I'm not really sure we know what we're doing here. For me, it all comes back to self-ownership. if I can't own myself, just like Jane Eyre, this is what of all those, I did enjoy Pride and Prejudice. I liked Frankenstein, but of all the books I read, I loved Jane Eyre the most. It's hard to say why other than this. Jane accomplishes she comes around to the practicality of Rochester, who is the most toxic. We're not going to spoil here. I mean, if anyone is toxic, it's it's Mr. Rochester. And it's like, dude, part of that is hot. I mean, this is the family friendly show. She knows she wants him at the end, but she can't take him into her life and into her heart fully. Well, legally. We're not spoiling it. But she can't take him into her heart and into her life until she owns herself as a person, owns herself as a woman, and then owns herself as somebody who wants to share what remains of her life at Thornfield or with Rochester and with Adele and with this future that she can build for herself where she's not alone. She has to have the strength to be alone before she can give herself to others. What a perfect value to instill in our modern age, in all people, and not just those who identify as men or women or girls or boys, but all people. This is a value that is truly universal to us as conscious beings. If you don't own yourself, you have nothing to give away. So before going to pursue to give away, pursue to be yourself and to know yourself and to allow what is true inside of you to express the way that it expresses. I'll never forget before this, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Mormon News Roundup, hi divas out there, did a mashup of all my old TikToks and published it late last night. I had not planned. Obviously, I had not planned this. I had no idea. I go to turn on some music on YouTube late last night and see my face on somebody else's thumbnail. I haven't had that experience yet. I haven't reached that Jacob Hansen status. And it's you put two of my faces between. He put my face in two really bad screen grabs with a bikini bottom shorts I made for a Hellfire Agency. I regret nothing. The swag at Hellfire Agency is and was awesome, and including bikinis. We did have bikinis, but we also had other kinds of things that were less objectifying of people's bodies. But I was sitting there, and basically he took like my oh no, it's ExmoJoe account from TikTok and just put it all in a row, and I'm like, oh fuck. Okay, here it is coming back, right? And I'm like sitting there watching it, and I'm like, no, I was right. I mean, I wouldn't say most of these things now at the Church of Korihor, but I wasn't wrong on most of it. There were moments where I said things that I got wrong that I've since learned I got that wrong. Okay, I got that wrong. Okay, fine. But one of the things that brought me back to thinking about is how often when I was on TikTok, because I used to do lives on TikTok, I would go live and debate with people. Your toxic man loves to have an argument. And I went out there and I did get into some arguments about gender. And a lot of them. One of these TikToks I did, I kind of immortalized this about, I was in this conversation. How much do I say about this? I was in a conversation where somebody confronted me and said, the reason why the Bible says that God made male and female is because female is the opposite of male. And I said, I'm sorry. One, you've made my point in more ways than you realize. But number two, you think that the word female means opposite of male? And and he says, yeah. And I said, can you think of any other word in the English language where the prefix "fee" means opposite? Anywhere, any word, any word. Is a feline the opposite of a line? I said, look, it may seem intuitively like you've figured something out about language, and we all do that. I said, for what it's worth, female and male don't even come from the same word. Female comes from the old French word femella, which comes from Latin femina. That's the same root from which in Latin languages and even this Germanic language that we speak, we get words like feminine, right? Whereas male came from an old French word, masla, which came from the old Latin word, which is it's interesting that so much of things that come from words that come from Latin are often shorter than the Latin. Masculus, which is from whence we get masculine. Believe it or not, male and female don't share any etymology. They are not from the same words. And it wasn't until somebody decided male is two things. Wow, this is me making a presumption because nobody really knows. For as far as I did do a quick deep dive on this when I made this TikTok. Nobody really knows when the spelling of male started to solidify. If you think that words were only spelled one way in ancient times, you haven't read Shakespeare or Chaucer. You definitely haven't spelled Chaucer. But as my father always says, it takes a very uncreative mind to spell a word only one way. But it was, male was two things in Old England. In Old English, it was a kind of armor, and it was also, a gender. And or I guess you would say in that case they would say sex. And so they had to come up with one way that you spell male, the way that you would put it down in the Bible, right? Male and female. And based on that, on spelling the word male, it's assumed they decided femelle should be spelled the same way. And that's how female maybe came about. Nobody really knows, as being spelled that same way. But the two words have nothing to do with one another. When you look at even closer into that, I said I might make there wasn't enough reaction for people for me to go on to the rest of my research, which is the origin of the word woman. That time, the documentary, What is a Woman? We use documentary, very loose scare quotes here, had been published by the Daily Wire. Anyways, and I said, here's the wild thing about woman. But I had put together a script for it, just never recorded it. Yes, I would script my TikToks, sort of. But woman comes from an old Germanic term, Wiefmann, which, is sometimes described as wife of a man. It isn't really. Wiefmann, the Wief may or may not have some shared etymology with wife. I don't think it actually does, though. But it was another kind of man, because man or man, which comes from an Proto-Indian phrase, they believe, at some point was referred to hand, which would make sense why in Latin, man, in Latin-based languages, you have mano, which is hand in Spanish. You have manual, to take something by hand and handle it, is to do it manually. No jokes. No, do the jokes. Do the jokes. I'm joking. To manhandle, right, is to take with the hands and handle it, right? Um, and so really what that means is that man in this in old Germanic language didn't refer to a gender or a sex. In fact, even up until the 19th century, man, it wasn't just used in poetic fashion. It was used in English in ordinary fashion to use man to refer to humanity, that all human beings are man. And that, so you would say, hence one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, or humankind, or however you want to do it. Man wasn't about masculinity. In fact, in Saxon traditions at that time, there were multiple words for kinds of gender. They had a kind of gender word, a gendered term for somebody who was born assigned female, but owned property, if I remember correctly, and one for assigned female at birth, but was a soldier. They had one for a person who was assigned female at birth, but was an adolescent or a teenager, if I remember correctly. Now I am going off of, not with these notes in front of me. Had to do with a person who was female in an assignment, the way that they were born, but had no desire to fulfill any of the traditional gender roles in that society of women, and so was on a different path in life. They were just on a different path. Don't call them a girl. Don't call them, or the same term for a girl. Don't call them the same term for a woman. They're on a different path. They're walking their own way. And we can see this in indigenous cultures all over the world. When we look around, we see indigenous cultures where women are the leaders of every household. I'll never forget when I was in college, again, actual college this time, when I was going on my mission, and I took anthropology, which is a fascinating course, even just Anthropology 101. If you haven't taken it, you should do it, or read some of these ideas. This is one of the most thought-provoking courses I ever took in my life. And they were talking about the Hawaiian family system, what it was called at the time. I don't know if they still do. The Hawaiian family system. Oh, Hawaiian family system. What is that? That is where the household consisted of a man and a father and a mother raising their children, their biological children. That's Hawaiian? I remember isn't that normal? And I remember my instructor looking at me, and he said, "I'm sorry, Elder Rollins," because people knew at that time my visa was. I had like a 4-month period between when I got my mission call and when I was supposed to report at the MTC. So everybody I knew that I was going to Peru on my mission, because I would tell everybody back then. And he's like, "I'm sorry, Elder Rollins, are you telling me that our system is a system where one man is married to one woman and raises children?" I'm like, okay, this is about polygamy. Hardly any Mormons actually practice polygamy. I was so naive and stupid. Anyway, and he said, but here's the thing: what we now consider as antiquated Mormon culture in many parts of Africa is normal. That family system still exists in Muslim tradition in a big way. And he says, once upon a time, if we're to believe the Bible is true, in Jewish culture it was the same way. And even if you don't have a system where you have absolute monogamy and then raising children as the product of this monogamous relationship, even in our American society, what do you have? You have work relationships, right? You have emotional affairs, if not affairs. And so you have a difference in What if in our society of what if a woman goes to work and has an affair with a man while she's at work and lives a separate life, effectively has a separate value system, a separate thing, relationship system at work life than if she's at home, versus if a man does the same? Is that the same thing? And I was like, this was a lot to lay on a 19-year-old boy, frankly. And but it was good. And I got a lot more. I learned a lot in that time period. It's also when I took my first philosophy course. Anyway, I officially tangentified away from where I was going with that. But when I was on TikTok, I would get into these debates over gender as a social construct, even though I was still very much, I'm still learning more about it all the time and understanding it, not only about my loved ones who are transgender or non-binary, and what I never understood about them. Understanding intersex people better in a better way, because it's just not a topic that we get into in society very often. That we're going to have to, if people are going to talk about gender and talk about sex and talk about the difference between biology and social construct. And I was still learning, but it was amazing how backwards it was for me to always have this conversation, and it always devolved into the same point over and over again. God made two genders. It always came back to that. And how many times I would say, do you know that there are family systems where men and women don't raise their own children? Where like you hand the children off to be raised by aunts and uncles. And they say, what? Yeah, you have like an aunt and uncle who raised the children, and then the parents come back into their life to just kind of check in on them and see how they're doing. But it's like a system. Well, that's insane, they'd say. That's ridiculous, is it? Because like even in our society where we have this Hawaiian system, it doesn't always work out that way. You wind up with kids being raised by grandparents. You wind up with kids being raised by aunts and uncles. You wind up with kids being raised by themselves. And it becomes a matter of practicality. And if you stop and think about it, it could make a lot of sense to say, well, you two are responsible for these children you brought into the world. So that's what you're going to go out there and you're going to work to provide for them. But then these other people who are available, who already have, financial security or what have you, they're going to be the ones who dedicate their time full time into being role models for these children. And it's like, that's a system that you could very easily see that actually may work. Not only does it work better? Is that better? What about people who are raised by grandparents? You ask them all the time. You talk to people who are raised by grandparents, and you discover that there was a different experience growing up, where two retired people were always around, versus those of us who were brought up in households where only one parent was around, or even at that, they weren't always around. People could look at traditional family values and look at something like my grandfather's family. My grandpa, Lindsay, had 10 children the old-fashioned way, not the old-fashioned Mormon way, the old-fashioned Mormon way, with one wife. How did they manage to do it? Well, he worked his ass off, put all of his kids through college who wanted to go to college, put all of his kids who wanted to go on missions for the church and on missions for the church. He farmed alfalfa at night. And by day, we didn't learn this. I did a TikTok. I didn't see this TikTok in the mashup, but I did TikTok about how proud I was of my grandpa, for all of his flaws. My grandfather, it was when I was 16, my father told me, he said, your grandfather wasn't a farmer, right? And I said, what? And he said, your grandfather wasn't a farmer. he farmed at night. He was a night farmer because he had land and he needed to make money to be able to put his kids through, to be able to support his kids on missions and going to college, which were the two things he had committed to when he was a kid. My grandfather lost his dad when he was 14, and he lost his mom when he was 16. He had older brothers who had already moved out of the house, and he had a younger brother he was trying to support. When his father died, his father came to him and said, I want you to promise me something. I want you to promise me that you'll go on a mission. There's a great recording, and I know I'm cutting into longer time. I hadn't expected to go on this long. We'll wrap this up. On my family's website, there's these recordings that my grandfather did for my aunt when she had asked him to record his life, excuse me. And he talks about when his father approached him. Sorry, I'm just checking to make sure this is not an emergency. That his father had approached him to say that I am, I know that I don't have long left in this world. And I've been proud to be your dad. I would have loved to have raised you, but I'm not going to get the chance. I want you to promise me that you'll go on a mission for the church. And so he promised him that when he was 14. 2 years later, his mom died of stomach cancer and left him with the Pioneer family homestead and a little brother. And some older brothers. I think he had 2 older brothers who didn't have time or money to support either of them, had families of their own already. And she told him, I know what you promised your father. I won't tell you to go back on your promise, on your word to him. But if you're making promises to parents while they're here, promise me you'll go to college. And that you won't be stuck here living this life. My family, up until that point, they were horse trainers. They trained horses for teams and ran horse teams in the winter. And she knew, Cora Rollins knew that my grandpa wouldn't have a future in a modern world living like that. He wasn't a perfect man, but he did what he could. Then she passed away, and there was a war brewing in Europe. And my grandfather knew that if he didn't get on the ball, he would lose his chance to fulfill one of those promises, at least, to his parents. And around that time, his younger brother told him, well, I want to go on a mission too. I promised Dad. He said, well, we can't both be gone at the same time. And if we don't get our missions done now, we're both going to lose our chance, because when America gets into this war, we'll surely get drafted. So he sent his brother off on a mission, and said, you can't wait any longer, while their mother was still ill. And my grandfather took care of his mother, took care of the farm, and supported his brother on a mission because there's no one else to do it. And his mother died while his brother was on his mission. And he sent him a telegram and said, don't come home. Mom knew what you were doing. We knew this. You said your goodbyes. You want to honor Mom, you stay out there and you keep going. He even lied to him a little bit. We won't get into that. And then his brother came home from his mission. My grandpa went out and fulfilled his promise to his dad. And even though his, group of his best friends had come to him one night and they told him, we're going to go out, we're going to find some girls, we're going to go to the dance. It was all about that. So he went and he met a girl who found out that he was an orphan who spent most of his time studying for school or farming and didn't want anything to do with him. So he ended up spending most of the time that evening third wheeling with with all of his friends. They were like, just come into town with us, even if she doesn't like you, we'll have a good time. And they went to town and they had a good time. And then afterwards they pulled him aside and they told him, so Lindsay, here's the story. We know you made promises to your dad and whatnot, and that you have to go on a mission for the church. But we just want to let you know that that we care about you as your friends, as your boys, and that you have an opportunity here if you want it. We're all going to go sign up in the army and we're going to go fight. And he wanted to. He really wanted to. Young man with visions in his head of going to war and being a hero. Why not? What's he got going here? He didn't even have a girl. Just kidding. And he wanted to go. But he promised his father he would go on a mission. So he did that instead. He went to the Southern States mission, preaching Mormonism to people in the Bible Belt. He got terribly sick. More than once, he wound up with companions who were assholes and were really and mistreated him. One of them, he talks about, he pulled his missionary companion aside one day and he said, this is an interesting thing to know, to have learned in the day of after Boyd K. Packer's little factory talk. We won't talk about that. Some of us just didn't have little factories as little as Boyd K. Packer's. That's a joke. That's a bad toxic joke, but it makes me feel better. So just let me have it. And he told his companion, he's like, you talk to me that way one more time, I'll haul your ass out to the outskirts of the city and I'll beat the shit out of you. My grandpa may have been a Mormon, but he was a Mormon farm boy from Cache Valley. And so, but he got really sick. And then his mission president released him and told him, Lindsay, you can't stay out here. You got to go home. And so he came home early, which always put a bit of a chip on his shoulder. I don't know, maybe that's the right way to say it, but it wasn't easy on him to be sent home early. But he did go, and he did return with honor by Mormon standards. And he went to college, and he became a chemist. I didn't know that because it was a government secret. Sounds very Napoleon Dynamite. Which of us knows illegal secret moves from karate moves from the government? My grandpa made rocket fuel for the Minuteman missile. That was his career. He worked all day at that. And he farmed all night, during planting and harvesting season, so that he could support. He grew alfalfa for the dairies. If you don't know, of course, Cache Valley is known for its dairy products. And then he married a girl, settled down. He had 10 kids. And to support those 10 kids, she taught second grade in Lewiston, Utah for 20 years or something like that. He spent his whole life to have children and to provide for them, and especially to make sure that the ones that wanted to, got a chance to go to college. and to go on a mission for the church. The 2 promises he fulfilled to his parents. He made good on his promise. I get why some people want to conserve the old ways of doing things, and get why family seems to us sometimes like it has to be defined in one way, and it has to be the way that we were brought up. But the fact of the matter is that we live in a time where the practical realities, the science, and the economics of our lives have afforded us an opportunity to redefine what was not working in our social norms. And some things about how we were brought up may continue to make sense. And maybe we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I can't tell you how many times I ended up having this argument with somebody, some stranger on the internet, one of my toxic TikTok days, who would say to me that trans women don't understand, don't have any respect for women, and aren't women, and don't have any respect for women. It's always the trans women they are really upset about. Trans men, trans masc, and trans men they don't even think about. It seems to me. And and how many times I have said this again and again. You think that trans women don't believe or respect what it means to be a woman? They are women. in their construct, they look at it. You notice that trans women oftentimes wear dresses. Do they wear dresses because dresses aren't just for women? They wear them because they feel more comfortable in them as a woman. They wear makeup because they're more comfortable that way as a woman. Can't say that a person who looks at that and says, that's how I would be more comfortable, doesn't respect women. And I said, and I don't know any trans women who hate women. Every trans woman I know loves women, respects women. And most women I know and who have my respect love and support trans women. So, yes, there will be some people who will say otherwise and feel otherwise. They're welcome to their feelings. They can have any kind of feelings they want. They really can. They can choose. You can't choose necessarily how you feel right now, but you can choose how you're going to feel in the future. I believe. That's what I believe. Because you can choose to reassess and say, am I wrong? Do I not understand? What do I not understand about someone else's experience? And we can do that for people who believe in conserving traditional family values, quote unquote. But I can look at that also and say, what were the practical realities? You know, it's like a morning constitutional or an afternoon constitutional. Why? Because you're going to stink up the house if you don't. That's why. Frankly, nobody wants to live with that, where you needed a chance for people who wear dresses to kick up their skirt outside, and because everybody's sitting around eating pudding all day. You can't be doing that all bound up and tight. And then during the cold months, sit in a room where everybody huddles close around the fire and is like, did you go for your constitutional? Fight me on this. That's what a constitutional was. That was also, to balance out your caloric intake to caloric output. Sure. I'm telling you, man, you can't open a window. There are practicalities to be considered. Believe it or not, I think that marital relationships and family relationships are kind of like that. You have to be practical about what people need in order to make this lifestyle work, because thriving in our society has a certain definition, and survival, that's got its own definition. And but both of them are matters of values about what does it mean to be alive, and to choose to be alive, and to choose to bring people into the world to come after you. When it becomes only about perpetuating the species, we've got it handled. If anything, there are too many of us. I don't think that we need to be panicked about that. But when it becomes about a matter of preserving a family name and preserving the family legacy and these other things, it's not morally wrong, in my opinion, but it can tilt that way very fast. I don't know if you could tell in this little rant I've done. While I am no longer Mormon and I am no longer a believer in God, I come from people who do. I'm not proud of everything they've done, especially Grandpa Harvey. I don't even remember if he was particular. I think it's actually my uncle Harvey, who was a polygamist. And the first Joseph Rollins that there was in my line was a Joseph Sharp Rollins, who was a polygamist. Not proud of everything these people did. Who would expect me to be? I hope nobody expects me to be. But there are things that I am proud of. Made me who I am. Toxic a-hole that I can be, and atheist to boot. I like to think that there are some things that I acquired from those traditions that are working for me and for other people. Now, there's this line. I'm going to say this, and then we're going to do a closing hymn, and then we'll go to Linger Longer. Sorry, I'm running over. There's this line in Pride and Prejudice, my least favorite of the Regency novels I read for this course. But when Mr. Darcy says to Elizabeth Bennet, in the moment where he finally breaks down and confesses how much he loves her, and he says to her that classic line, every person who loves Regency novels out there or has loved them in the past knows exactly the one I'm talking about. You have bewitched me, body and soul. I often think about that. It is stupid romantic. But at the same time, what's incredible about it is this idea that love isn't physical attraction purely. That love is about a desire to blend one's mind and experience with another. That if your soul is something immortal, if it is something immaterial about you, it's about hope for a future. And to have someone bewitch your soul, for me, means I don't know what my future is or what it holds for me. I only know that I don't want to do it without you experiencing it with me. So whatever power you have over me, shame on you. So marry me. And it's a stupidly romantic idea. One that you're going to need at some point in your life if you really do want to get married, I think. And one that will be de-romanticized as you live married. But you know what? If you feel like you have to have it, I say go for it and do it anyways, because frankly, nobody gets out of this life alive. You might as well have a chance to experience the things you want to experience. And marriage, with all of its good and bad. In my life, even as a person who is ENM and polyam, has been one of the great decisions I have made with my life. And I don't regret it. I don't regret anything about it. Of course, when people ask me how I married so well, I say, well, you have to marry Molly, who really did bewitch me, body and soul. Wasn't the last, but luckily we shared values on making that work for both of us. And it's been truly sweet. Amen, brothers and sisters and sistren and non-binary. So it's been about an hour and a half since I looked to see that there were comments in the StreamYard, because I've had a half-read sermon pulled up this whole time. Anyways, those of you who want to, you are certainly welcome to join us in Linger Longer. I think I put that in the description, put a link to it. I did not. You guys know how to get there. But yeah, I'll try to stay with Linger Longer for as long as I can here. And this was, oh, thank you, Jules. Oh, wow. I don't have time to go through all the comments. So you guys have been over here commenting and I didn't even know. Anyways, I'll see you guys over at Linger Longer. Let's do a closing hymn. I'm going to say this time, we're going to do Ride or Die. I was going to do Lick My Cupcake, but we did that at the beginning, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Yeah. Ride or Die.
You walk down the aisle all dressed in white. I was sweating bullets, hoping it'd be alright. Priest said the vows would bond us tight, or till we can't stand another fight. Kissing in front of 100 eyes, love in our hearts till one of us cries. Riding this wave with all our might, till we hit that drop from a crazy height. Ride or die, that's the game we play. Love you forever or just one more day. We'll face the world, come what may, or run from each other without delay. We promise to cherish, at least for now, hoping we never have to throw in the towel. For richer or poorer, that's what we vow, until bankruptcy or divorce somehow. In sickness and health, oh what a bet. Hope we can handle whatever we get. From sweet memories we won't regret, to lawyer fees we haven't met yet. Ride or die, that's the game we play. Love you forever or just one more day. We'll face the world, die, that's the game we play. Love you forever or just